Another evening of museum in Lotus. It's me, back at Museum in Lotus, not Mr. Pork. I hope you had a wonderful time with Mr. Pork.
I think we had a very good time.
Good time?
Yes. Yeah. We exchanged views. I asked some pertinent questions regarding his life in terms of the experience he had here in Lotus. What did he buy? And he told us the story of buying a first piece and bringing him so much luck. For 2 years, he had not been working, and that gave him the possibility of starting a career and doing very well in the career. So I think that personal touch was very important, and I think it all went relatively well. I'm quite happy about it.
Wonderful.
Yes.
So last week you talked about with Mr. Pok about the Guanyin, right? And with the lions, which I must tell you, I hate to miss that episode because I saw the Guanyin and the Guanyin was amazing. Beautiful.
Amazing.
Yeah.
It's really a beautiful piece.
I will definitely be coming back to the Guanyin and the lions later. But there's a question, and I shared today's session. I hope if you haven't done so, please share as well. I was discussing with Mr. Pino, and I want to ask you the same question. Is that I was asking the crew as well. Do you think that ancient China, okay, even China as a whole, you know, do you think that it's an open or closed country? Do you think it's an open or a very mysterious place? People are not allowed to go in. It's very foreign to a lot of people. Is it open or is it closed? What do you think, Mr. Pino?
Well, it's quite interesting, the question that you pose. And from a Western point of view, and for what I heard about China over many, many years, it was a closed country. I wouldn't say the same thing at this point in time. I think China has done some wonderful things, has opened up, and it's not a case that a lot of students, even from Italy, have gone to study in China, and they are the best messengers in the sense when they come back, they tell us about their experiences, and they go there, I know a number of them, to study the language. And for me, to study a language means to understand and to study the culture. It cannot be a technical thing, meaning you learn how to translate. It's about understanding the word, understanding where the words come, and associating the language, again, to the culture.
Right.
And which country has a culture so deep and so extended for millennia?
Have you been to China yourself?
I have been several times to China, and I remember the first time I went, it was because the bank had sent me to sign loan
Which part of
agreement.
China? Sorry, which part of China?
I actually went to Beijing.
Right.
And because the bank that we were lending the money to was based in
Beijing.
In Beijing. And we went there with the current lawyers, the lawyers that we had at the time. And it was such a fantastic experience because the lawyer could understand, of course, the language, they're Chinese, and they would translate to me. And I enjoyed that experience, but what mostly I enjoyed that the day after, when everything was signed, we had the chance of visiting the Forbidden City.
Right.
I had heard so much and seen so much at the Forbidden City, but nothing like being there and just breathing the air and looking at these wonderful artifacts. I will never forget the beauty of the collection of clocks from all over the world.
Not so forbidden after all, huh? Since you can go in.
No, absolutely.
I want to understand. So,
Yes.
so since we are talking about this, that probably now, as we know, China is not that close. But why do we get the connotation that in the past, China was a closed country? I mean, what happened? Why did we say that China was a closed country?
Okay, the only explanation that I can possibly give, but it might be inaccurate, is what happened in 1949, where the position that it was taken was a very harsh one. And it's, to me, for what I understand, it sort of cut itself out in certain respect. But it's also a way of the West to isolate. I mean, America's never liked communism, let's admit it. The association of the Communist Party, and so strong like we have in China and in Russia, has always been an element of antagonism with America. And Europe, in many ways, let's admit, is very strongly influenced by America. So it's also the projection that this is not about merits or demerits about a country. Each country has its own agenda. Each country behaves in a certain way. But this is the perception that I personally have had for many, many years. But when I did go to China, and after that I went back and I discovered many more places, beautiful places. It's again the culture, one of the aspects of China that I mostly admire.
Right. So actually China, or at least feudal China, even China today, is actually anything but close. In fact, we have proved today from the many antiques that we're going to share. In fact, it includes an antique that you and Mr. Pock shared last week, that it's actually a very open and accepting and actually even giving culture and country. Let's talk about what you and Mr. Pock talked about last week. You talked about the Guan Yin and the lions. And you actually mentioned that we both know that actually Guan Yin did not originate from China. It came from India. And lions, the thing that they tie to the kids' legs, the lions actually, they come from Persia.
Persia, yes.
Persia root. And all of them going to China, and they got absorbed and assimilated, adapted, and it became part of the Chinese culture. That we know. In fact, of so many episodes that we are on China, that a lot of the elements we realized that, it's actually originated from somewhere else, and it became Chinese after a while. This we know, and it's quite similar to Master-Yin's arts. We know that we've been talking about Master-Yin's arts, that there are traces of different elements, there are traces of different styles, including oil painting and so on. So in Master-Yin's painting, while it's a Chinese painting, you can recognize it has silk from Cambodia, it has acrylic paint, it has gold, which is like what the Egyptians did in the past, and so on. So you can see many styles and techniques into one piece of art. But today, we have with us antiques, artifacts, not for sale again, of course, these are Master-Yin's private collection. But from then, we can actually have a better understanding of what it means back in the old days in China, how open it was as a country and culture. And from then, we can actually see that Master-Yin's art shares the same characteristics as well. So today, we are actually going out of China, in a sense, but you still see some things that are very Chinese, which is a strange thing, huh? So it's not that close after all, right? Which areas are we going today? Not China, out of China. Oh, wait, am I saying it correctly? Out of mainland China.
We are going out of mainland China, but it's still in the ambit of China. And what's, again, very interesting, how the culture carried from China, again, in this particular case, to Tibet.
So today we are going to Tibet.
We're going to Tibet.
Right.
To the autonomous region of Tibet.
Right.
And in particular here, you see a wonderful chest. When I say wonderful chest, we have in the past seen some beautiful chests, none of this dimension. And it's regal in many ways. And the color is also extremely attractive. It's a sort of red, brick red, and it's very simple in its construction, and it has the usual construction which is typical of the Chinese construction, which we have many times commented about, which I will not actually repeat myself, but it's the same kind, simple construction, no glue, no nails, no screws. So when we look at this wonderful cabinet, it could have been a cabinet for a monastery, and for the design, which we will elaborate later, and from the color, I would tend to believe it comes from a monastery, but it could also have come from a very rich, prosperous house that gave the order to make this cabinet. It's in soft wood, as most of the furniture that we find in Tibet, and beautiful proportion. You will see that there are only 3 segments, and the first 2 segments are absolutely identical. We have four doors, and these 4 doors that we see are square in shape, and they're flanked by rectangular elements, segments. And you will see that the design is the same. Again, as I mentioned, we will touch this design.
So we are talking about that this chest is from Tibet. Okay, let's set some records straight.
Yes.
What's the age? What might be the age of this?
Okay, for me, this is 1900s. So when I say 1900s, we're talking about 1840, 1850, or 1860. I mean, it's very difficult to establish with precision the date of these pieces because they were made also in the late 1900s, 1920, 1930s. But my best take is that this was 1840, 1850s.
So we are actually talking about Qing dynasty.
We're talking about Qing dynasty.
If you talk about 1850s, 1840s, it would be at about the same time as we saw the many good signages at about that period of time, the Qing dynasty. And if we don't say that it's a chest from Tibet, you might misunderstand that it looks very Chinese. I mean, we are talking about how the Chinese are accepting and assimilating many different styles and cultures. So it's not a closed country. But at the same time, there are many different regions and countries as evidential as we are going to see from these various artifacts. They are influenced by the Chinese style as well. Because one look at it, one thing, if you look closer and you can see, before I come to the flower,
yes,
which is very important because it keeps repeating itself, is that we see that this thing over here, small little thing, sometimes we go for the details because the prosperity is in the details. Here, this is absolutely Chinese. This is absolutely Chinese design.
Meander border. This is the way that people technically mention about this detail that we see here. Very, very beautiful detail.
Right.
And we only see it in this section. There's no other section that has this detail here.
So definitely very Chinese. So chest we have mentioned quite several times on a chest. We have seen different Tibetan chests and so on. But this chest leaves us a symbol that is very crucial. And this symbol is all over the place because you just cannot miss it. Remember we did a Tibetan chest that has two dragons?
Yes.
It's still in the gallery now because it's fantastic. That dragons, we know that maybe many different cultures share it, but it looks very Chinese. But here, there's a very soft symbol that if you look at it closely and you ask yourself, what exactly is this? And you go back to history and time, and you'll realize the great mystery of whether China is was an open, a closed country, can be solved very easily. And it is this flower that Mr. Pino has mentioned here. Here, what is this flower? Because if you talk about this, you will solve all the 8 panels, you know?
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, my pronunciation is definitely not correct, and I apologize for this. But to the best of my ability, this is called the Bao Xiang Hua.
Oh, this flower.
This flower here.
It's called the Bao Xiang Hua.
Yes.
Bao as in 宝物的宝, the precious.
The precious.
The precious. Xiang, it's xiang, that means the face or the facet or the figures, right? Or what does it look like, images. Hua is flower.
Yes.
So it's the flower of a precious image.
Yes.
The flower of is the translation. You said, what do you have as translation?
Can I say the translation that you've given is exactly the one that I have in English?
It's the flower of precious image or the flower of precious figurine or something like that. Okay. In Chinese, it's simpler. It's called 宝相花. So this is a symbol that we have here. But there's a mystery to this flower. Am I right?
There's a mystery. This is an imaginary flower.
This flower does not exist in real life.
Does not exist in real life. And this is the combination of 8 petals. And the 8 is something that we've been repeating what it means for the Chinese culture and tradition. 8 petals. And these 8 petals are the petals of actually 3 flowers. Again, 3 important flowers in the Chinese as Chinese symbolism, and that is the peony, and then we have the lotus, and then we have the chrysanthemum. Now, if you look carefully at this flower, the only way to really appreciate it is to come over and to spend a little bit of time looking directly. One thing is to look at it through a video. One thing is to come here, look at the proportion. The proportion will tell you also about the beauty. And as we've mentioned, we have here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Again, a repetition of the number.
I have a friend. We have friends here who are trying to type in the exact name of the flower.
Yes.
And I'm going to type in the correct way to write it. So we would know more exactly what it means, you know. That's the one. Yeah. You can refer to my comments there. And Bao Xiang Hua, yeah.
And it's a beautiful sound. I mean, for me, who I don't know the language, I've been repeating this to myself several times, and I quite like the way it actually, and what I like, it's an imaginary flower.
Did this flower come from, is it from Tibet?
Can I say, it's very difficult to establish where it came from, but if I have to make a guess, and please, it's only a guess, I would think that this comes from China.
Right.
Because I've only seen it in certain things, in certain details and of particular things, but here we have, and it's beautiful, and it's for you to come and admire. And when you look at it, the size of the petals are actually different. So it's really an imaginary, and what it represents the Buddha. It's actually called the rose of the Buddha, and therefore it identified the highest authority and reference point in Buddhism.
Right, so that means we have a flower now that is Buddhist related.
Yes.
We have a flower that doesn't originate from Tibet, and high chance that it actually came from China.
Yes.
That means that this would have or might have gone into Tibet via China along with Buddhism and therefore appearing on this chest. So
Yes.
it was an exported culture.
Exported
culture from China into Tibet. And if my guess is correct, because Tibet actually has various religions. Today, Tibet is well known for its sect of Buddhism, but it wasn't always the case because before 600 AD, before Tang Dynasty, there was another religion in Tibet, and that's called we call it Benjiao or Bon religion. It's more primitive, it's a different way of devotion. But during Tang Dynasty, one of the most prosperous eras and most prosperous dynasties in not just Chinese history, but in world history as well, that actually something happened. The second emperor of the Tang Dynasty, Tang, Li Shiming, okay, he married his daughter, the princess Wencheng Gongzu, into Tibet. And when this marriage happened, she brought along many things from Chinese culture, the way of art, craftsmanship, and so on. And along with her, also Buddhism was exported into Tibet. So my guess is that this flower, even though this chest was made in the 1800s, 1900s, or 1,200 years before that, about 600 AD plus minus, that this symbol and this precious Bao Xiang Hua would have followed the Tang Dynasty princess Wencheng Gongzu into Tibet and exported out of China.
I mean, I think it's amazing, and it's amazing also because was there a necessity to create an imaginary flower? And I think this is, again, the capability of the Chinese to create something special for a special person, and that was the Buddha. So the reverence that a flower like this emanates is really something that shows also the devotion, not an ordinary flower, an extraordinary flower. 8 petals again, and and of extreme beauty. And when we look at one of the panels, just let me briefly tell you about the panels, because they're all identical with the 4 central ones which are square, and then we have the 2 sides which are rectangular. Okay, when we look at it, all around this flower, there's beautiful foliage, and there's also details of other details, again, of vegetation.
Right.
After this, we have a frame, and the frame has no flowers, it's plain. And it's just to put the emphasis on the center. Then we have the corners, and the corners we have flowers, and then tendrils again, ornate.
Right.
There's nothing else. All the rest, again, that we see, it's a repetition of foliage. Now, if you come and you touch it, and I do say, please touch it so that you feel you got the feel.
The emboss effect.
It's the emboss effect. And
totally unnecessary, but
unnecessary,
but a great adornment.
But when you talk, when we talk about beauty sometimes it's unnecessary. But what it creates, let's imagine that this was in a lama's room. And inside the lama's room, there were textiles and there were other paraphernalia. And again, from time to time, maybe the High Lama would touch and would feel, would have a sensation of the way the craft was, the piece was created. And this is created through the technique which we have mentioned in the past of the stucco, S-T-U-C-C-O.
Right.
So stucco is just like plaster. Imagine the plaster that is placed on a wall. This is placed on the wood. And then after that, there's the carving. And then after that, again, there would be the pigmentation. And by virtue of touching it, then you will see also the difference of colors. When we look in particular at the flower, you would see a yellow color. Unfortunately, slightly oxidized because of the time, but the flower is yellow. And this color in the Chinese culture is associated often to the emperor.
Right.
So there's this kind of association of beauty, of sensation, and of great proportions. Again, let's not forget that the 2 rows have 8 panels. Although not identical, they are 8, and all show the same beautiful, extraordinary flower.
Well, we have friends who are with us, Laura, Eileen, Amanda, who just typed in the word 宝相花, you know, it's so this is something, when you go and Google about this, you can learn a lot more about this thing, and it will tell you that it might be from China. So what we are seeing today is really made in Tibet chess, but super Chinese influence that we'll speak about. Because last episode we talked about how the Chinese absorbs other culture from Persia, from India. Therefore we have Guanyin, and therefore we have lions. But today we are seeing a piece that's not in China per se, but very much influenced. That means it's exported from China. It's China's ways of, after absorbing something and giving it back to the entire world. And we see on the flowers here, we see it on the grains, the patterns over here, and have. You were mentioning that, let's imagine for a moment that it might be in a lama's or someone of high ranking or someone who's aristocrat's room. What might they store inside?
Okay, it could have stored textiles.
Right.
Okay, at the same time, various objects for rituals, important ones. Let's not forget that the High Lama would use silver items, and you know, we have the sort of butter lamps,
right,
where they would actually put butter, yak butter, in order to illuminate the candle holder, let's say, in front of the Buddha.
Right.
So all of these precious items would definitely be contained in this wonderful cabinet. I mean, it's aristocratic in many, many ways. It's noble. It's the simplicity. It doesn't have the multicolors. It only is based on 2 colors here, and this wonderful red brick and the yellow. There's nothing else. Simplicity at its maximum. And let's not forget that the best furniture ever in terms of design which were fabricated were during the Ming period. So linear, so simple, which are a reason of inspiration even to this day.
Right. So you mentioned you might have stored, I have stored something inside the cabinet today. This Chinese influenced Tibet cabinet or chest, if you mentioned.
Yes.
And I store it on the first layers of drawer. Should we take a look?
I'm very curious.
So here, it's a wide opening and simple mechanism. You know, after 100 over years, it's still very steady.
It's very steady. It's very steady.
Probably can last longer than IKEA furniture then. So I've stored something here as well. The colors are super vibrant. Look at this.
Wow.
Look at this thing. I have here, I borrowed this rope from Master Yun. Probably, you know, ancient wise, they might have stored clothes on top of one another,
Yes.
just like this.
Yes.
And I particularly borrowed this rope from Master Yun because on this rope that is done in China, hand woven, silk, gold lining, gold thread woven from Beijing's Ruifuxiang, the top place that even does for Obama, Hillary Clinton, all of them, the long gown that Master Yun wears. You see it?
How amazing.
Do you see the symbols that's on the gown?
It's exactly the same one that we have on this doors.
A different angle, but on this gown that belongs to Master Yun, it's also the Baoxianghua. It's also the, what you mentioned, the Buddha's rose, or what we call the flower of precious images.
Yes.
Is this on this robe? So Master Yun actually has been wearing this for quite a while. And if I remember, one occasion that Master Yun wore it to was actually at Holland, the Netherlands,
Right.
during his exhibition. There we see.
So opulent.
So centuries and centuries ago, China exported through, during Tang Dynasty, exported Buddhism, the way of Chinese art, including Baoxianghua, to Tibet. And many centuries later, specifically in 2019, Master Yun wore this robe that has the same flower, the Baoxianghua, to the Netherlands, in a way exporting the Chinese culture and this flower to the Netherlands as well.
And the beauty.
And the
Exporting.
beauty. Look at it, just touch it. Yeah, just touch it a little bit. It's
It's
finest silk,
incredible.
It's
Beautiful,
finest silk.
beautiful.
right? So it's all related. From here, we can fully understand that the Chinese is not a closed society. In fact, it's very, very open and very, very willing, while to assimilate different cultures and actually to spread it across the globe. I specifically chose 2 different paintings today. The one behind you, Mr. Pino, it's actually the exact one of the pieces that was exhibited in the Netherlands in 2019. It was exhibited in Marienhof, 500 years old chapel or monastery. This is the painting that was exhibited over there. So we can imagine during Tang Dynasty, when the princess of Li Siming was married to Tibet, and he brought with him craftsmen, skills, art, Baoxianghua, Buddhism to Tibet. And the Tibetans loved it, inherited it, made Buddhism their main religion, and lived a great and prosperous life from all those Chinese arts and crafts. And in 2019, Master Yun did the same thing, brought the way of Chinese fengshui arts to the Netherlands, exhibited over there as well. My point is that every single culture can have its chance to absorb styles and values and techniques from different places. But the question after that is, what's after that? And then how? The difference between Chinese and, the similarity of Chinese and Master Yun's art is that after they have absorbed different techniques and values from different places, they go out and they give back and they actually, communicate and influence the rest of the world. As we see with this chess in Tibet, as we see with Master Yun's art, because there is actually no need for Master Yun to bring the art all the way from Singapore, all the way to Netherlands to exhibit. What's the point? But to share and influence this culture. And that's what the ancient Chinese were doing. So in this sense, they are actually a very open culture and country. Very.
And interestingly enough, when we speak, and what you were saying makes so much sense, culture is very easy to accept. Very, very easy to accept. And therefore, for the Tibetans, to accept something which was absolutely very beautiful, and again, it had a Buddhist meaning, was very important. And that's the reason why they repeated this wonderful flower, imaginary flower, becoming the rose of the Buddha.
Right. So we have this first layer.
Yes.
We also have a second layer here. And there is also something in the second layer that will continue our story on how the Chinese are actually great exporters. I mean, they are great exporters to the whole world now, but they have been, and they have been sharing this thing with the rest of the world for decades and centuries already. In the second layer, you see, same cabinet, I have something else in it. Okay, let's take a look. Two pieces of, am I right, bronze or copper? Copper?
This is actually copper.
Copper. And let me take it out. Yeah. Something different, not garments.
No.
Okay. This is one.
This is one.
Something shiny. And there we have the second piece. There we have it. Do we need to exchange? Is it on different sides? I think probably like this, yeah.
This is the way.
What is this that we are looking at? These are from Tibet as well.
These are from Tibet. Again, a beautiful couple of elephants. And you can understand the elephants because of the trunk. Very detailed. As I mentioned, these were made out of a copper sheet.
Right.
And they used two techniques which we've touched about in the past. One is the repoussé technique, and the other one is the chasing technique. These are techniques which the repoussé start by hitting, hammering actually, the sheet of copper from the back so that it would push forward the metal.
Right.
After the metal is pushed forward, then there would be the other technique, which is the chasing technique, that would hammer all the details, pushing the metal back so that the design would just protrude, is just like it's embossed.
Right. We talked about this technique before.
We have spoken about this. And this is the technique which jewelers still use to this day in their products.
Right.
Now, let me show you, if I can, how deep is the work that has been done. So you imagine by hammering and hammering, you would get this kind of effect and this pushing the metal outwards. It's a beautiful elephant. Now, the details of the elephant, I will be able to briefly touch on, but as I mentioned, by coming to the gallery, and do make the time to see things of this high quality, you will be able yourself to appreciate the details.
Right.
Now, let's look at the hoof. The hoof of the animal is basically finished with the nails. Now, let's think about how important is this animal for the Tibetans, but not only for the Tibetans, as I understand, also for the Chinese. And both, we have mentioned, the lion and the elephant are beautiful and important symbols for the Buddhists. This particular one is possibly representative of the white elephant. How many white elephant in your life anybody has been able to see? I've not seen one.
It's supposed to be a white elephant.
This is the white elephant. And this is representative of regality, aristocracy, and the very high position that the white elephant used to have and still has. Again, only royals will be able to surmount the elephant.
Right. But I have a curious question.
Yes.
You say elephant.
Yes.
This is a Tibetan thing.
This is Tibetan.
Elephants do not survive on high ground.
They do not survive. But let's think why this. It's not an ordinary elephant. This is the white elephant. Again, it's associated with the faith. When you look, this is the biggest animal that exists in the world, and therefore is associated with the faith. Important. You cannot shake the faith from a Buddhist. You cannot. This is what it represents. And at the same time, this wonderful animal is a calm animal in general, and is very docile. And when we look at this beautiful image, it's full of details. Look at the trunk. You can even see the folds of the skin. When we look at the face, you can even see the tusk coming out. As we can see the rich harness of the attire of the elephant. Over and above this, we see at the top what is the bud of a lotus, and that is the indication that this is not an ordinary elephant, and this is not an ordinary sculpture. Most possibly, and I detect this by the holes that you will see here, 6 or 7 holes, these 2 pieces were part of a wall decoration which had many more other elements. It's gilded. Mm-hmm. We can see that there's still some pigmentation, red pigmentation, and you can even see the bulging eyes. You can see the tail on one side. And when we look at the 2 animals represented here in this sculpture, they actually the heads are in the opposite direction. Right. So they're not identical. They look identical, but they're not. And the heads is one of the elements of differentiation that we have. Again, I repeat myself, and I'm sorry if I do that, do find the time. It only will take a short quarter of an hour, 20 minutes, to come over, to take a look at this majestic chest, and take a look at this wonderful elephant, the white elephant.
So definitely it's got to do with Buddhism, elephant as we know. Those of us who are familiar with the Buddhist religion will know that the elephant is one of the, what's the word? It's a steed, it's like a pet, or say, of one of the 4 major Bodhisattvas Pusa in the Chinese Buddhism world. If I'm right, you remember correctly, it's Puxian Pusa. Yeah, she has a pet, or she has a car, or a steed that is of the 6-trunk elephant. So the elephant, no doubts, it has everything to do with the faith over here. And Mr. Pino, you have mentioned the lotus bud on it. It will give the greatest hint that it's going to be a Buddhism-related thing. But once again, the strange thing is that elephants do not exist in Tibet. And elephants are not even native to China.
They're not.
So something weird or something mysterious has happened around here. That something from China that didn't exist there went into China, became part of Chinese culture, because it is common to actually find elephant sculptures in China, and they represent power because the word of elephant in Chinese it is xiang, 大象, big elephant. It actually it's the same sounding as prime minister.
Wow.
Yeah, so we call a prime minister 丞相. It's the same, the xiang, it's the same. So when this person reaches a certain status, and if you go to the house, you'll see that in the front yard they will carve elephants. It's to symbolize the status because it sounds exactly like minister and prime minister. So, but the thing is that they are not native to China as well. So something happened, something came into China, and then Chinese adapted it, like how they adapted Guanyin, and then from China they went on to Tibet. Maybe from Tang Dynasty onwards, maybe from Sui Dynasty, maybe and henceforth. And it became part of Tibetan Buddhism heavily because we're not just seeing the elephants on these two pieces of bronze, copper plates, delicately designed, as Mr. Pino has wonderfully explained about it. You have to look at the details. It's nuts. It's amazing. And we see that this piece of center thing that has been here for quite a while, this we know, it's a manuscript cover. On many different episodes, we have covered something like this. Symbols, we see there is a seashell that we know they're all part of Buddhism symbols. But also on this, the tree thing, I see that is this an elephant as well?
It's a beautiful elephant. It is, absolutely. Look at the face.
It's an elephant, right?
It's an elephant.
So you see the four legs, the big ears, yeah. You see it, the big ears, and then you see the trunk,
yes.
the tusk. Am I right? The tusk.
This is the tusk.
The tusk.
Absolutely.
And of course, carrying heavy things like what is this? Jewels.
Okay, this is a vessel containing pearls, and it's a reiteration of the Buddhism. But the way it's been represented, this elephant, is just incredible. One would just want to touch it and caress it.
Absolutely. So once again, we see the elephant happening. So it's not just on the copper plates. It's nearly on varying different artifacts. You see in Tibet, Buddhism artifacts, the elephant is there. And it's weird because I don't think they have actually seen a lot of elephants in Tibet at all because elephants need grassland to graze.
Yes.
They need a lot of land to roam. 100%, they are not like mountain goats. They cannot survive on high grounds, which is where Tibet is. So the adaptation to this to this elephant symbol and idea, it's fascinating.
But if we consider an additional element, this is the cover of a manuscript. And when you think about the manuscript is made out of paper, and it used to have this is the top part, and it would have had a bottom part.
Show them, yeah.
Yes, in wood, and then the two pieces and the paper would have actually been tied together with cloth. Now, we're talking about a piece which dates back to the 15th century.
This piece?
This is 15th century.
It's at 1400 plus.
Correct.
That means it's Ming.
This is a Ming period. This is a Ming period.
Wait, oh my God, this is the heaviest one.
It's the heaviest one. And the dimension makes you think how big it was, the paper manuscript cover.
Right.
Absolutely amazing piece. Very dense hardwood. Whilst we have spoken about the cabinet, and this cabinet is softwood, for this kind of pieces, they were used hardwood and very dense wood, possibly purchased from the neighboring countries. When you look at how delicate, how fine this carving has been made, marvelous.
Yeah,
and it's about highlighting the elephant in particular. In the center, just to give you a very brief explanation, it's the symbol of the symbol of Tibet, and these are the two chasing snow lions. very interesting, very beautiful. They're in the sky. And then we have the Makara here,
Right.
which is a combination, actually, seated on a pedestal. It's a combination of a dragon. It has the dragon head, and it has the scale of a fish. Again, these are imaginary animals. The only non-imaginary animal is the elephant.
It per se, non-imaginary because it exists. Oh, this is terribly heavy, my
It's
God.
very,
Can
very
you imagine
heavy.
the scriptures it used to hold?
Yes.
For it to deserve such a heavy cover,
Yes.
and probably it's the weight of the elephant. I'm not sure. No, what I mean is that not imaginary because it's definitely a real animal, but it doesn't exist in Tibet. It's definitely an import from China. The concept of elephant, because elephants, as I said, they don't exist in China. They're not native
Yes.
to Chinese. But elephant sculptures or elephants were first sighted in China during Shang Dynasty.
Yes.
Shang Dynasty, if you remember, is 上古三代, Xia Shangzhou. Xia Shangzhou Zhou Dynasty was about, my God, my history. Okay, it's definitely more than 2,500 years ago. So I forgot, yeah. Han Dynasty, it was a crossing of the AD BC period.
Yes, yes.
So before that, before Han, it was Qing, and it was the Warring States. There was Zhou, and then it was way before Zhou. One dynasty before Zhou. That means about 2,500 years. There was Confucius. That means about 2,800 years ago, Shang Dynasty. In China, they already had elephants. And the dynasty is called Shang because Shang means to commerce, to trade.
Yes.
It was a dynasty of traders. So some traders must have brought the elephants, let's say from India, all the way into China. And they recognized this majestic creature. And the identity of elephants stayed in China. And by the time it was Tang Dynasty, 680, about 1,400 years from now, not from now, before now, Wencheng Gongzu, the princess, the daughter of Li Shiming, the second emperor of Tang Dynasty, brought Buddhism and the art and the culture and the idea, and probably including the Baoxianghua, and probably including the idea of an elephant into Tibet. And it got stuck there. And it just stayed on there. And now it's part of Tibetan life. So the whole concept is fascinating. How China actually assimilates so many different aspects from so many different worlds at the same time, while they make it into a very Chinese thing and they spread it to its neighbors and across the world. And that we see, China is not a closed country. It was a very, very open culture, most willing to accept, most willing to go out and give and influence. What you said just now, which I agree very much, it's easy to adapt, to absorb. But the question is what happens after that? We know that this of Maastricht's painting went on to Netherlands. The one behind me is the exact one that went on to the Great Wall of China. See, there are many artists, they can paint at the comforts of their own studio. They can stay in their own country. You become your national best painter. But even for something about Maastricht, probably similar to the Chinese-ness of the predecessors, of the ancients, is that you can absorb, but at the same time, you go out and you influence and you spread the good word, or you spread the good prosperity. Going on to the Great Wall of China, number one, going to Netherlands as well. It really determines the value of the culture, because I think the value of the culture really it's about how many people you have influenced. The legacy, as we keep on saying this word, it's how many people benefits from it, let's say after you have passed on. 1,400 years away from Tang Dynasty, we can still see the influence of it in this chest, in this manuscript cover, in the copper plates that has the symbols that were imported from China. And that's the legacy of the Chinese Empire back then. Similarly, in Maastricht's art, if he would just be comfortable to stay at Upper Thomson or in Singapore, that would be his reach. But Maastricht has reached to the Great Wall of China, to Netherlands, to Spain, and so on. Art Beyond Museum is all around the world now. That's the legacy and that's the value. It's different. So that's why his paintings and his art commands such a value, because it's evident, it's everywhere, it's influencing. It's a worldwide influence and sensation. It's the key thing.
And providing inspiration to people.
Providing inspiration to many people, not just this group of people, not just this country of people, but people from all over the place. How much you are worth depends on how many people you are affecting and influencing, right? That is the key thing. I mean, because you say you worked in the bank for 40 years.
Yes.
Oh my God, 40 years, yeah. A branch manager is paid differently from a country manager. And a country head is paid differently from a regional director.
Yes.
Because of the people they influence and they are supposed to take care of, right? It's different. A local painter, it's local. An international painter, an artist, it's different. It's just different. And on a different scale, different influence, and therefore, different value. That is what mastering is doing as well. Just like what the Tang people, just like what the Chinese have been doing all along. Adapt, assimilate, and go on to spread it across the entire world. Open country. The question is answered. It's not a closed country. It's a very open culture. Accept, assimilate, and go on and spread. In fact, today I have with me something that would be quite a pleasant, I wouldn't say surprise, we have talked about this before on other channels, that I have with me a letter all the way from the Netherlands. You know, I learned something. You're not supposed to call them Holland. In Singapore, we just call them Holland. It's not correct, am I right?
Yes.
Because Holland is supposed to be just a province.
The Netherlands.
It's called the Netherlands. They have corrected me several times about this. Yeah, that this is a letter from Netherlands. Not sure if you can see it, but the stamp, it says, I can't read Dutch, but it's from Netherlands International. There's a stamp here. The postage is covered. And if you recognize this on the stamp, this is Master Yun. Master Yun is on the stamp here. This is in recognition of his contributions to how he spreads the Chinese culture and arts to all around the world. You see, to congratulate and to recognize his achievement, you can take a look at the blah, 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 showed Chinese artists' attainments and charms to the world with their outstanding achievements. We are really grateful to you and your great contributions to inherit and carry forward the excellent culture of the Chinese nation, put the national policy of the Belt and Road into practice deeply, and undertake the cultural diplomacy responsibility of China. That means it's about taking Chinese influence, taking Chinese culture, and go out of China to influence other people. As you can see, that's Master Yun on the stamp. That's Master Yun on the stamp, right? So where can we find an artist that has his own stamp, and not just a local stamp, but international? That is just like what Tang Dynasty was doing. Henry Kissinger said, the Secretary of State during,
Yes.
who was the guy? Shucks, I forgot his name, the president who dropped the gold standard. Nixon. During Richard Nixon's time, 1969, 1970, he was the Secretary of State. He wrote a book and he said that for 18 centuries in world history, China is the most prosperous. And actually one of the most prosperous dynasty was Tang Dynasty. The question is that why? And if you look at the things that Tang Dynasty was doing is that they go around the whole world and they just keep on doing arts, spreading a lot of things, spreading a lot of culture, and that determined their value. Today, I tell you, and I tell many of the clients who come to my place about Master Yun's art. The antiques you see here, don't ask me how much this Tibetan chest is. It has Chinese influence. Don't ask me how much this manuscript cover is. It has great Chinese influence, super heavy, amazing qualities and details which you won't be able to cover today. They are not for sale. Okay? If you want a piece of culture that is like the Tang strength spreading around the whole world, you should get Master Yun's art. Because as I told you, that the value is going to go up and up because just like Tang Dynasty, the influence is spread internationally and all around the world. It's not closed, it is super open, and it's open to the whole world. That's the value and that's the whole legacy. Today we look back at these two artifacts, these few sets of artifacts, And we go back and answer the question, is China an open or closed country? And then we realize that why was China so prosperous for 18 centuries in the world? Then from here, we look at Master Yun's art, and you realize that there is a reason to the whole value of his art. It's crazy, yeah.
Very well said.
We have to ask a question. While we draw the lucky draw for last week, the one that you and Mr. Pork asked the question, we covered a series of different antiques today. The common thing about them, other than they were all from Tibet, okay, one from 15th century is amazing, okay, we have covered manuscripts before, so I'm not going to dwell too much on it, which means this thing has been around for 600 plus years, nearly 600 years. Nuts, yeah. So they're all Chinese influenced, exported, culture exported from China or imported from China. We talk about this, something that's a bit more difficult to type. This is the Baoxianghua. One of the evidence that we have that, you know, China was exporting its culture all along. Then we talked about the second symbol that was evident in the copper plates and on this manuscript, this symbol here, that this creature is not a native creature to both Tibet and China.
Yes.
But China imported this long ago, assimilated this, and exported this to Tibet. What is this symbol? What is this creature here? What is this thing here? They're going to do a close-up for you to have a better look. Yeah. What is this? This is one of the evidence that China was exporting its culture.
Beautiful figure.
Strong, heavy, stunning. And it makes a lot of sense, you know, because this such a heavy manuscript cover would actually have such a heavy creature to guard the entire manuscript. So what is this creature that we are talking about here that is very evident, is the absolute proof that Chinese culture was exporting? It's not a closed country, it's very open. So this thing, this creature over here.
Just the biggest animal that you can possibly find.
Absolutely. Okay, so just put in the comments, and next time when you go to the zoo and you see something like that, and you say, okay, now you know a little bit more about this creature. It's not that simple. It's actually there's a lot of rich cultural heritage to it, a lot of rich history to it as well. And it is just connecting a lot of nations together. Went into China in Shang dynasty because of traders, and after that in Tang dynasty, went into Tibet. And just like how Master Yun's art, while he inherits and while he learns, while he adapts from all over the world, and how he actually make it into his own and bring it to the rest of the world. This creature is stunning, it's majestic, and it's the absolute symbol of China's cultural success. Let's take a look at the winners for...
Yes.
You know, this chest can be a great chest to store all these wonderful letters. And
yes.
You know, yeah.
Memorabilia.
I just realized that what is this?
This is to put a lock in order to prevent that this chest is opened.
Yeah, I was just thinking, such a beautiful chest, there should be a lock. So there we have. So it's a big block.
It's a big block.
Okay.
Absolutely, yes.
See, I'm thinking like how it works back then already, yeah. Think about the lock, yeah. Would you choose 3?
Yes.
So it's quite the flow, because last week we saw artifacts that were influenced, they were in China, but influenced from outside of China. Today we see artifacts that are outside of mainland China, that are influenced by China.
Yes.
You see, the whole trading of cultures, it's just stunning. And you can talk a story and you talk a theory about it, but you can see the exact artifacts and they'll give you a better impression. The first one is Jervis Chua.
Congratulations.
Congratulations, number 1. Number 2, we have Claire Key. Claire Key.
Congratulations, Claire.
Yes, number 2. Number 3 is, let's take a look. Thank you. We have Li Ah Noi. She's a lucky one.
I
Yeah.
remember this name.
Yeah. If you remember a Chinese name,
Yes.
that means that it has come up for several times.
Yes.
Yeah. This has exported into your mind already. Yeah. Leah Arnoy, Claire Key, and Jervis Chua, congratulations.
Congratulations.
Hope these three winners, and of course, all of us, all of you who are viewing today, can capture the essence. And from here, follow us back into Tang Dynasty, how prosperous it was, how it was spreading its influence and culture and strength to so many nations and cultures all around, just like Master Yun's art, just like Master Yun's painting. We will see you next week as we discover more. Cheers.
Thank you very much.
Cheers.
Cheers.